Hello viewers, you're welcome to this episode of our program, Learn at Home, brought to you by Kampala Parents and NTV, Uganda. We are going to make correction of our work, but before we make correction, we need to observe the guidelines made by the President of Uganda and the Minister of Health. Always use sanitizers to sanitize your hands. Wash your hands with soap or any detergent. So we are going to begin by looking at these people who submitted their work and we make correction. One is Mbowa Elijah, Kampala Parents. We received your work. We are happy. You are going to get a response. Mulungi Joel from Kampala Academy. We received your work. Reni Letasi from Lohana Academy, P6. I'm happy you submitted your work. Alinda Gilbert, P7 from Mitoma. We received your work. However, number 2, we have always encouraged you to be brief. You said, trees grow thin and tall. The answer was just, trees grow tall. The element of saying thin was not necessary. God-given Elizabeth from Gothien Primary School in Ruwero. We got your work. Queen from Kaboja Junior School. We got your work. Ishuti Carlos from Pearl Junior School. I'm happy people are submitting their work and indeed you're going to get the response. Kwikiriza Justin from Kampala Parents. I was very excited seeing you submit your work and indeed you passed all. I'm very grateful. Bassa from Teltabis. We got your work. However, you failed in number 2 and you failed the spelling of evaporation. Let's first have it here before we make corrections of our work. Evaporation. Let us spell it together. E-V-A-P-O-R-A-T-I-O-N. Evaporation. So, when I look at the way you wrote your word, you put U, which is not supposed to be there. This is wrong. This is the right word. Let us go ahead and look at some other people. This was Addison David from Joy Primary School, Masaja. The way you phrased your answer was not right. You said, by evaporating when heated by the sun. Indeed, be brief. Because when you keep using very many words, you end up losing the track. So you only had to say, through evaporation. But when you say by evaporating when heated by the sun, you're spoiling your answer. However, you had the right idea. When you look at Najemba Irare, also from Joy Primary School, Masaja, I'm very happy. Those from Masaja are really enjoying and watching the lesson. Also have Aliyo Sean Prince from Makindye. We got your work, but be brief while answering. Call Janet Gabriela, we got your work. We have Joseph Balikudembe from Shilonile in Bujukwe district. Be brief while answering. Use very many words. But you're going to see how brief we can answer our work when we are making correction. We also got work from Wampatiti Gabriela. You failed in number 2, but be brief and precise. You said, the sun hits the water bodies to cause evaporation, which contributes in rain formation. Be brief and precise. I also have Owori Nicholas. You failed in number 2. So number 2, most people failed it. It challenged very many, but we're going to make correction of our work. Number 1, state any one way fertility of the soil influences equatorial vegetation. So, when we talk about fertility of the soil, first of all, we said areas that have fertile soils have a lot of vegetation. So here, this time around, when we talk about relating fertility of the soil in relation to equatorial vegetation, shall simply say a lot of vegetation, a lot of equatorial vegetation grows in areas with fertile soils. So we shall say a lot of equatorial vegetation, a lot of equatorial vegetation grows in areas with fertile soils. A lot of equatorial vegetation grows in areas with fertile soils, or equatorial vegetation grows well in areas with fertile soils. That was number 1. Number 2, how does competition for sunlight affect trees in the equatorial region? How does competition for sunlight affect trees in the equatorial region? The answer was just simple. Trees grow tall. Trees grow tall. Most people added very many words which were not necessary. Somebody said trees grow tall and form a canopy. Somebody said trees grow thin and tall. All that was not necessary. Simply say trees grow tall. They grow tall because they are competing for sunlight. That is, when you look at science, when you go to science, it's called phototropism. The response of trees towards the sun or light, towards light, is phototropism. So the trees will keep growing. If this one grows taller than this one also come and grow taller than the other one, and the same applies. That's why we are saying they compete for sunlight. That's why they grow tall. So trees grow tall due to competition for sunlight. When we go to number 3, the question was, mention any one way water bodies help in rain formation. Simply say, through the process of evaporation. Or one can simply say through evaporation. So you are saying through the process of evaporation. There is somebody who was just explaining evaporation. The sun hits the water body. When the water is heated, all of that, you avoid it. Simply be brief, like I told you. Avoid very many words. Be brief and precise. When we go to number 4, give one problem faced by people who live in equatorial region. We looked at this. It was in our work. So we said attacks from dangerous animals. Attacks from dangerous wild animals. Attacks from dangerous wild animals. Floods. Poor transport. And lastly, we shall talk about insecurity. The last question was, mention one area in Uganda with equatorial vegetation. That was number 5. So we shall talk about shores of Lake Victoria. Shores of Lake Victoria. Shall talk about shores of Lake what? Victoria. That's 1. Areas around Mabira Forest. Areas around Mabira Forest. And that was our work. I'm very happy that people are making corrections of our work. So let us look at some mental work. Very few questions before we go for our commercial break. The first question, what are physical features? The second question, mention two types of vegetation. The third question, why is equator marked 0 degrees? The fourth one, we are going to have some two questions of R, since R is part of SST. Why did God create Eve? From which material did God create Eve? We are looking at our answers of our mental work. Number one, we can say physical features are landforms of an area. But there are some people who say physical features are natural landforms of an area. That's wrong, because we have man-made lakes, we have man-made rivers. So avoid putting the word natural in the definition of physical features. Simply say physical features are landforms of an area. Avoid saying natural, because there are some physical features that are made by man, like the Kabaka's Lake in Uganda, Lake Nasser in Egypt, and many others. Mention any two types of vegetation. We looked at this in the beginning. We have planted vegetation and natural vegetation. However, there are some people who say artificial vegetation as being the same as planted vegetation. That's wrong. Man cannot make vegetation. Man cannot make a tree. Man cannot make grass. So we don't have a type of vegetation called artificial vegetation. Maybe I've seen some flowers that are manufactured in industries, those that are plastic. They are the ones we can call artificial. But when you are looking at types of vegetation, we only talk about planted vegetation and natural vegetation. Avoid the element of some people who say artificial vegetation. That's wrong, and I've explained. Number three, why is the equator marked 0 degrees? When we talk about the equator, we can have a globe, and that's the equator, which is marked 0 degrees. Why is the equator marked 0 degrees? We are going to say it is the starting point when measuring lines of latitude. When you're measuring these other lines of latitude that cross the globe, they measure them right from the equator. So we are saying it is the starting point when measuring lines of latitude. That's one answer. Another one, we can say it divides the world into two equal parts. And those are the only answers we can give as to why the equator is marked 0 degrees. This question can also be asked in a different way. Why is the prime meridian marked 0 degrees? We simply say it's also the starting point when measuring lines of longitude. So let us look at our second last question. Why did God create Eve? To give Adam company. You can check Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. To give Adam company. The last question, from which material did God create Eve? One of Adam's rib. And you check Genesis also chapter 2, verse 21. Since RE is part of SST, it was necessary for me to bring those two questions for us to look at them in our mental work. So let us not get tired of sanitizing our hands, washing our hands with soap. So we have been making corrections over the previous work. We are going to review our previous lesson, then we look at something new. We looked at equatorial vegetation. I'll come back to you and ask you, since we were together when we were looking at equatorial vegetation, where do we find equatorial vegetation? Yes, I can see most of you trying to answer. We have equatorial vegetation in Uganda, around the shores of Lake Victoria. Then mostly in the equatorial region, and that is central part of Africa and the coast of West Africa. Then when we leave where we find equatorial vegetation, then we can also talk about, remind ourselves of the simple economic activities that are done in the equatorial region. Yes, Addison, in your sitting room, saying lumbering, can talk about hunting, tourism, crop growing, and so many others. When we leave that aside, we also talked about animals that are found in the equatorial region, or areas that have equatorial vegetation. We talked about the monkeys, the mountain gorillas, the chimpanzees, because we said they feed on the fruits. Then we also talked about the characteristics that that equatorial vegetation consists. So you can talk about equatorial vegetation has hardwood, timber, buttress roots, it's evergreen, it's non-deciduous. We said non-deciduous means it does not shed leaves in a dry season. The trees grow tall. Why? They want to compete for sunlight. The trees form a canopy, and we said a canopy is an umbrella-like structure found on the trees in the equatorial region. From there, also talked about the factors that favor the growth of equatorial vegetation. We talked about fertile soils, reliable rainfall. We said since the place has a lot of vegetation, a lot of trees, this one leads to a high rate of transpiration. And since the area also is having a lot of water bodies, then there is a high rate of evaporation. So, I want to leave equatorial vegetation at that. Then we also talk about some other vegetation zone. Today we are going to look at mountain vegetation or mountain vegetation. It's called mountain vegetation or mountain vegetation. So we can talk about mountain vegetation. It is also called mountain. It's also called mountain vegetation. So, mountain vegetation or mountain vegetation is found in areas that have mountain climate or mountain climate. And these mostly are found in areas with mountains. Areas that have mountains are the ones that have mountain vegetation or mountain vegetation. It's mountain vegetation or mountain vegetation. Just, there's no difference between the two. So, we shall begin by talking about examples of areas that have mountain vegetation. Examples of areas with mountain vegetation. Examples of areas with mountain vegetation. We can underline our subheading. Mostly these are areas that have mountains. If you know of any mountain in East Africa, in Africa, in Uganda, these are the areas we talk about. So, tell us one. One is saying Mountain Elgon. Mountain Elgon. Yes, any other? One is saying Mountain Rwenzori. Mountain Rwenzori. Mountain Kilimanjaro. Mountain Kenya in the central part of Kenya. Then lastly we shall talk about one, Mountain Atlas. Mountain Atlas. and so many more. All those areas that have mountain climate, that have mountains, and areas where we have mountain vegetation. So, we shall not list very many all mountains in Africa, but we shall just have a few to make us know that these are the areas that have mountain vegetation. So, since we have looked at those areas, now we are going to look at some other area. And we shall also talk about economic activities that are done in areas with mountain vegetation. Economic activities. Economic activities done in areas with mountain vegetation. Economic activities done in areas with mountain vegetation. It's good to underline your work. Your work looks neat and nice. So here, when we talk about economic activities done in areas with mountain vegetation, we simply talk about economic activities that are done in mountainous areas. When we talk about economic activities, we mean these activities that are done by people to get money. We also said, instead of one saying economic, one can say commercial. So, we can begin by talking about them. Yes. There is somebody called Paulo in Chibuli told me that he's all the time following with with his daughter. He's all the time following, teaching his daughter. And I love that, and I've enjoyed that when I saw him telling me that I'm always there following your lessons and I'm teaching my daughter in my sitting room. I was very excited and said, continue doing that because that's the way to go now. We don't know when this will end, but that's the way to go. So, tell us one. Yes, one is saying tourism. Tourism. Like we said, tourism can be done everywhere in mountainous areas, around lakes, rivers, forested areas. Tourism can be done there. Tourism is the act of visiting places for leisure and study purpose. When you leave this place, you go either around mountain Elgon, you go and to other place, you can be enjoying and at the same time studying. That's what we call tourism. And at the same time, people around the area where you've gone will be earning money. You've gone there, you're going to be buying water, you're going to be buying food, you're going to buy the crafts. So people in that area will be earning money. And that's why we say tourism is an example of an economic activity. That's why tourism is called an industry. It's called an industry simply because it's a source of income to the people. It is a source of jobs to the people. Then tourism can also be called an invisible trade. Why? Income is earned, but there is no exchange of goods. So I've talked about tourism as one of the economic activities done in mountain vegetation. Any other? One is saying hunting. Can talk about hunting. It's also one of the economic activities that are done there. People around there can earn from it, and they can earn a living. There's also crop growing, since the place receives reliable rainfall. Crop growing. Crop growing is done in mountain vegetation because there's a lot of rainfall received there. Can also talk about lumbering. Lumbering. And lumbering is simply the cutting down of mature trees for timber. When you cut down trees for timber and you sell the timber to get money, that's what we call lumbering, and it qualifies it to be an economic activity. So since we have looked at the economic activities that are done in mountain vegetation. We can leave that and move on. There are so many, but we're just talking about few of them. We can also move ahead and talk about why foreign tourists like visiting mountainous areas. Can have it maybe in a question form. Why do foreign tourists like visiting mountainous areas? Why do foreign tourists like visiting mountainous areas? When we talk about foreign, we mean those who come from other countries, other continents. Foreign tourists, we mean those who are not within here. Foreigners, a foreigner is somebody who is new in a place. So for this case in Uganda, when we say foreign tourists, we mean those who come from other areas. So why do foreign tourists like visiting mountainous areas? Yes, viewers. Yeah, one is saying to enjoy the cool climate, or mountainous areas have cool climate. So we can say to enjoy the cool climate. There is cool climate in mountainous areas. Any other? Yeah, one is saying there is a good view, or there is a beautiful scenery. There is a good view. Good view means the same as beautiful scenery. When you are on places of a higher altitude, you're able to see features that are at a distance. That's why we are saying there is good view in places with mountain vegetation. When you are at a place at a high altitude, you're able to see at a distance and you enjoy looking at such. So, we don't want to waste time there. Let's move on to some other part within mountain vegetation. We can talk about, can remind ourselves of the importances of mountains, since we are talking about mountain vegetation, which is found in mountains. Before we go for our commercial break, let us add another point here or we can say for research. For research, you know, foreigners want to carry out a lot of research. I don't know why us as Africans, research is far away from us. So you can say for research. Let us talk about the importances of mountains, since we want those of P4, P5 also to benefit. And I've also seen many are submitting their work. We are receiving work regardless of the class where somebody is. We have got work from P4, children, P5, P6, P7. So we can talk about importances of mountains. Importances of mountains to people. Importances of mountains to people. Importance of mountains to people. Let's underline it. Importances of mountains to people can be classified under social, political, and economic. But let us have them down. Let us have them written down. Then we shall be classifying as we go on to understand our work. Yes, tell us one. Your one is saying mountains hope in rain formation. Mountains hope in rain formation. Mountains hope in rain formation. How do mountains hope in rain formation? Mountains direct moist air into the atmosphere. If this is a mountain, then warm air comes and meets the mountain as an obstacle. It changes direction of the warm air into the atmosphere. So mountains hop in rain formation by directing moist air into the atmosphere. That's one. Another one is saying mountains attract tourists. Mountains attract tourists. Mountains attract tourists who bring income. Any other? Mountains act as political boundaries. Mountains act as political boundaries of countries. We are going to give examples of this. When you look, mountains act as political boundaries. Mountains act as political boundaries of countries. So when you come and look at our mountains, we have Mountain Elgon. It forms a political boundary between Uganda and Kenya. We have Mountain Rwenzori. It forms a political boundary between Uganda and DRC, or Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's why, for that point of view, we are saying mountains form political boundaries of countries, or one can say natural boundaries of countries. Mountains, another one can say, mountains are used for settlement. There are some people who live in mountains. Mountains are used for settlement. Mountains are used for settlement. In Uganda, we have the Abagisu. They are living on slopes of Mountain Elgon. We have the Bakonjo and the Bamba. They are living on slopes of Mountain Rwenzori. So mountains are used for settlement. Mountains are used for mining. Mountains are used for mining. There are some minerals that are mined in mountains. So mountains are used for mining. So when we come and classify our work into social, political, and economic, when we say mountains hop in rain formation, that is social. Mountains attract tourists who bring income, and you're seeing the element of earning income. That is economic. Mountains act as political boundaries of countries. That is political. Then mountains are used for settlement. That is social. Mountains are used for mining. This is economic. It's an economic contribution. So after looking at the importance of mountains, we are going to look at our chart. We are going to look at our chart and also get to understand more about our chart. So we are going to have questions about the chart. Number one will be, what evidence is there to prove that some mountain peaks are below the snow line? That's one. Another question, question 2. What evidence is there to prove? What evidence is that to prove that some mountain peaks are above the snow line? So we are going to understand our questions. So when we come and look at our chart, mountain vegetation changes in relation to the altitude, and altitude is the height of land above sea level. So when you live from different meters as you move on our chart, you see vegetation keeps changing. We have grasslands basing on this altitude. Then when we move on, we get the forested areas or forests. Then we come to our bamboo forests, moorland and heath, the bare rocks, then the ice basing on the altitude. That's why we are saying, we are now answering our question is, what evidence that prove that some mountain peaks are below the snow line? They lack snow. They lack snow on their peaks. They lack snow on their peaks. Then here, what evidence that prove that some mountain peaks are above the snow line? They have snow on their peaks. They have snow on their peaks. We are going to give examples of such mountains. When you look at Mountain Elgon, when you look at Mountain Elgon in Uganda, it does not cross the snow line, so it does not have snow on its what? Peak. Then when you look at Mountain Rwenzori and Mountain Kilimanjaro, they have snow on their peaks because they cross the snow line. So you have understood these are some questions they can ask. Why are some mountain peaks below the, what evidence that proves that some mountain peaks are below the snow line? They lack snow on their peaks. What evidence that proves that some mountain peaks are above the snow line? They have snow on their peaks, and I've mentioned some examples of such mountains. We have Mountain Kilimanjaro and Mountain Rwenzori. Let us have our activity, and I'm happy most of you are attempting all the questions, and we are marking, and I know most of you are learning, and I'm very grateful. So number 1, state the political importance. State the political importance of mountains to countries. State the political importance of mountains to countries. Question 2. What evidence is there to prove that some mountain peaks are above the snow line? What evidence that proves that some mountain peaks are above the snow line? Question 3. Question 3, we are writing our question about tourism. Mention any one way tourism. Mention any one way tourism. Mention any one way tourism promotes economic development. Mention any one way tourism promotes economic development of countries. Mention any one way tourism promotes economic development of countries. Mention Number 4, mention any one social importance. Mention any one social importance of mountains. Mention any one social importance of mountains to people. Mention any one social importance of mountains to people. Last number, name. Number 5 is name the mountain in Uganda which is snow capped throughout the year. So we are reading through our questions to understand them. State the political importance of mountains to countries. That's number 1. Number 2, what evidence is there to prove that some mountain peaks are above the snow line? Number 3, mention any one way tourism promotes economic development of countries. Number 4, mention any one social importance of mountains to people. Number 5, name the mountain in Uganda which is snow capped throughout the year. We shall be very grateful when you answer them well. The number on the screen, don't call. Take screenshots of your work. Record yourself in a video and send your work. I remain Babinga Moses, your teacher of SST. We are grateful. You're going to send your work. Thank you for watching. Remain tuned on NTV.
To participate, send a short WhatsApp video of yourself asking the teacher a question about the topic to 0705 031 609.